Hello, and welcome to today's Opt to Thrive Manage Your Mind Mindful Moment.
Welcome to Opt to Thrive, your go-to podcast for women's wellness in midlife, designed to educate, support, and inspire you to live your very best life. And now your host, Dr. Karina Sims.
Happy New Year, everyone. By the time this episode airs, you will have brought in your new year. But today, for me, I'm recording this on New Year's Day. I started off my new year with a beautiful summer morning river swim with my friends, and then we had a coffee, and now I have the rest of the day to just kind of organize myself and think about what I want this next year to look like. Do some planning, which is fun. We had a really low-key New Year's Eve, had a barbecue at one of my best friend's houses with another couple as well. And after dinner, my girlfriend broke out a list of questions, asked us if we would all be happy to answer the questions going around the table and answer the same question, just kind of reflect on last year and on what we want the next year to look like. She thought that the boys would probably be happy to answer maybe one or two of the questions and then be done with it. But we actually got through the whole list. There were about a half a dozen questions. And it was really interesting to hear all the different answers to what we're most proud of from the last year, what we want to try, what we'd like to change or do better in the next year. And she also asked if we could go anywhere in the world, where would it be if we were going to go anywhere this year? Now, during some of the discussion around the questions, I learned something new and interesting about my own husband. He commented on how proud of me that he is for doing what I'm doing and how happy he is that I found something that just brings me so much joy. But he then went on to talk about how engrossed I get in all the bits that are involved in making it happen, and that often towards the end of the day, he'll see me here in my sunroom working away, and instead of coming in, he'll just keep going on with his other jobs because, a farmer's work is never done. There's always jobs that need to be done. This was a surprise to me that he often just kept going with his work because he thought I was still working. So he may as well just keep working. From my perspective, I'll just keep working until he comes in for the day. And for me, that's my cue. It's probably time to wrap it up. And then we make dinner together and we spend the rest of the evening together. I hadn't realized until that conversation last night that we weren't on the same page here, that we're both making some assumptions. I thought that I had long ago learned the lessons that to assume had taught me. You may have learned, as I did some years ago now, that the meaning of assume was found in its spelling. To make an ass, A-S-S, out of you and me, M-E. So this was just a little reminder that all is not always what you think it is. And even at 54 years old, and with some years of marriage behind us, it's still worth asking the questions, asking for confirmation that you're on target with your perceptions. This and something that had happened earlier on the same day while I was busy working away in my sunroom made me reflect on communication in particular. So my sunroom is overlooking a large garden area that we've put a lot of time into building up on what was here already some beautiful established plants and shrubs. And so we've added more lawn and we put in more garden beds, and I have just packed them full of all different kinds of flowers. It's a real kind of cottage garden is kind of what I'm going for. And then I also have this small little raised veggie patch. And so during the summer, here it gets pretty super hot a lot, and because there's no sprinkler system in the garden, we have to be really mindful of making sure that we're on top of the watering and getting that done regularly. Now, watering plants isn't my strong suit. I've been known to kill a few things. And so my thought when I do remember to water is that I should really douse it, right? Really get heaps of water on. We have a few different sprinklers, and there's this one that really drenches a small area at a time. So I just use that one. I put that one on for, not very long, and then I move it to the next area, and I just keep moving around until everything's watered. And so it's a reasonably quick process. And it gives me a reason to stand up while I'm engrossed in my sunroom so I can see the sprinkler from where I'm at. And it just reminds me to get up, move a little bit, and get outside, which is really nice. So it kind of breaks up my reading or my research or creating whatever I'm lost in doing. Now, many times, I've maybe lost count, my husband has tried to explain to me that I should be, so see, he's shooting on me. And maybe that's why I don't recall what he has actually said to me, but he has told me that I should be using the sprinkler that puts a smaller amount over a larger area. Now, I think that what I have heard him say was that it would be easier for me because I'd only have to move it a couple of times rather than multiple times. And maybe that would be more efficient with my time. But see, in my head, it sounded like it would just take a lot longer to do it this way. I'd have to leave it on for a lot longer. And he's a farmer. What does he know about growing things, right? So anyway, I just stuck with my way because that's, I love the idea of all my little flowers and my veggies getting huge drinks of water. And the idea of having to remember to move that sprinkler after some hours wasn't appealing because my attention span isn't that long. I want the job done quickly so my headspace isn't taken up by something else that I have to remember. So it works for me, right? So here I am working away and he's popped in to the sunroom to just remind me for, the umpteenth time which sprinkler that I should be using. But this time, he actually explained the reasoning behind why I should be using the bigger sprinkler. Now, I think he has explained it before, but this time I actually got what he was saying in a different way that made more sense. He explained it in some, farmer kind of way. But at the time, actually made a lot of sense. Something that what happens to the water when you put a lot on versus a little in the area and blah, blah, blah. But in those 30 seconds that he was explaining it to me, it made a lot of sense. And so now I'm going to use the bigger sprinkler. I can't explain to you exactly what he said, but I now know it's better to use the bigger sprinkler. Not just because it saves me from having to move it multiple times, but because it's better for my plants. Now, even while explaining it, it was all a little half-hearted, and he made the comment, he seemed a bit defeated that he'd told me this multiple times before. But this time, it was like a light bulb moment. It really did make sense to me in a way that I understood it. I understood it in a different way, and in a way that made more sense. So I told him that I had never understood it in the way that he had just explained it. I think he had tried to explain it before, and I think he thought I understood and was probably a bit frustrated that I just kept ignoring his suggestion, advice, instruction, whatever. And here I was thinking he was just trying to make it more convenient for me, and that was nice, but I was just happy doing it the way I was doing it. So twice in one day, I realized that there were gaps in our communication that we didn't even realize existed. And it made me wonder how many more gaps existed and what we could do to close those gaps. Now, it seems to me that gaps could be closed by doing a little more checking in with each other, checking for understanding, checking in with ourselves to see what assumptions we're making. For me personally, I plan to do a bit more checking for gaps this year and maybe a little less working and a bit more quality time with hubby, smelling all those beautiful, well-hydrated flowers in the garden. I hope you will too. I hope you've enjoyed this Manage Your Mind mindful moment. And if you have, and you can think of someone else who might enjoy it, please pass it on. And don't forget to rate and review the podcast to make it more visible to those who might get something out of it too. Have a great week, everyone. And until then, I hope you opt to thrive.
The Opt to Thrive podcast is designed for information purposes only and is not engaged in the giving of medical advice. The information provided on the podcast should not be used for diagnosing or treating a health problem or disease. In no way should the information provided by Opt to Thrive be considered medical advice, and at all times the advice of a medical professional should supersede recommendations from Opt to Thrive. If you have or suspect you may have a health problem, you should consult your healthcare provider. The views expressed in this podcast are purely that of Dr. Sims and do not in any way reflect those of the institutions she contracts her medical services to.
Thank you for listening to Opt to Thrive. If you've enjoyed listening, please rate and share the podcast. You can visit our website at opttothrive.com and leave a comment for any subjects you would like to hear more about.